Nice. So yes, welcome to our talk. We are going to talk a little bit about our game, Drink the River, and I think we would like to start with like a small trailer that we cut together. And yeah, so if you haven't played the game yet, it's also available in the Pixel exhibition. And yeah, if you haven't played it yet, you will get like a preview. Yeah, thanks. That's it. All right. So
Yeah,
maybe,
so
yeah,
yes. Yeah, thank you. I guess we want to say like thank you so much for having us at the festival and having our game there. It's yeah, very exciting for both of us because this is the first time we've kind of been able to share the game with um a wider audience. And yeah, we're sad we can't be there, but it's nice to also be able to like share in this space here today. So I'm Rosa and I'm an artist filmmaker from the Lake District in the UK, so kind of the most north of England you can get. And my creative and research practice really explores the entanglements of place, ecology, and people through an elemental lens. So by this, I've been working with the river and also the wind as different kind of research practices and ways of engaging with place through these things. And my current research is exploring the Helm wind, which is the only named wind in Britain, and also the wind in Oman, in the Saudi Arabia, and also the River Eden, so continuing practice there. Um, and a kind of big influence of this practice is ethnography beyond the human, so very inspired by Eduardo Kuhn and his book How Forests Think. So that's kind of a background to who I am. Christopher?
yes. I'm Christopher Bonk. I am a German illustrator, animator, and game designer. And yeah, I'm currently doing my master degree in communication design at the Folkwang University in Essen. And yeah, I'm kind of like I said, illustration, animation, game design. I'm kind of spread out in all these creative fields, and also to yeah 2D and 3D versions of each of these aspects. And yeah, during my my main income basically is working as a lecturer in my old university because I did my bachelor's in Dortmund, and also working as a tutor. I do a lot of workshops with like kids and teens and try to explore digital creativity in these workshops. And yeah, the final part of our game is Demona. It's like an artist duo of two people, Andrea Evangelista and Delio Galman, and they are from Italy in Milan, in Milano. Yeah. And yeah, they basically did the OST, like the soundtrack for the game. They will also be working on the sound design in the future. Like, yeah. And yes, they do a lot of sound design and producing over in Milano. So that's us. And now Rosa can talk a little bit about the backgrounds.
Yeah, so the game was really born out of a kind of response to work I was doing in the River Eden. So I was making films there, um, several different films, but one of them involved a group swimming down the entire length of the river. So the River Eden is goes through Cumbria in the north of the UK. It's about 80 miles depending where you measure it, and is also the 10th most polluted river in the UK. So these were kind of important factors. And with this work around the River Eden, it became very apparent that there was many barriers to access the river. So the first one was physical access. So there's a lot of private land ownership along the side of the river, so it's very difficult to get into the river. And the second one was pollution. So, being the 10th most polluted river in the UK, the pollution in the river meant that actually, if you could get to the banks of the river, you don't really want to get in it because it's so polluted. So, these kind of factors were the inspiration behind thinking, okay, if you can't get into the river, and it culminated in someone saying you we can't film either. So there was kind of this final thing of not being able to show it in an image. Then the idea came to kind of build the river in a game and explore the world or the world of the river in a kind of completely different way. So that was when I contacted Christopher and our kind of this collaboration began.
Yeah. So then I was confronted with the like opportunity to create a game. I think Rosa had quite like a plan in her head already of what the game was supposed to be like. And she also had these ideas, I think, partially from Google Maps because there were like some glitches, and then you would end up in space and so on. So yeah, we had a talk, and then I decided to take on this project because it sounded quite interesting to me. And yeah, I tried to like these Google Earth images were also like a great inspiration for the style because one aspect of the project was that I have this river that is quite far away from where I live, and I wasn't there yet, so I was basically developing a game of a place that I have never been before, and I think it was also, or it still is, quite a cool opportunity to figure out like a place without actually being there, and because the game will be a digital piece of media, also exploring this place in a digital medium like Google Earth or like, yeah, well, I was looking at a lot of pictures of the area, like photographs, and yeah, all this kind of loose imagery, yeah, went into the project. So I came up with like an art style that is kind of, yeah, referencing at least the Google Earth, like aesthetic of like super destroyed 3D environments that are like, yeah, like generated from satellite imagery, I think, and it's quite rough still. You've probably all seen like the Google Earth 3D models, and yeah, I try to replicate this in the game, but actually having like atmosphere and so on, because yeah, those are just like the pure colors in the Google Earth scans, and I try to like uh, give like another layer to the game. So one other aspect that I'm always interested in is trying not to hide the digitality of the art project. So when I'm doing animations and so on, especially in 3D, I'm trying to always, I don't know, like because I'm seeing it a lot in photorealism and this strive towards photorealism in games and animations and so on, that you basically try to make it indistinguishable from reality. And I'm always thinking about how to break this I don't know, this striving towards this idea, and always trying to, yeah, incorporate aspects of animation and 3D design that are unique to the medium. So like glitches and like, for example, seams. You can see like these seams of the texture. Usually you try to avoid it in 3D design. You try to hide the seams in like behind structures, and I'm consciously showing them. And yeah, I try to come up with this art style. I don't know. I think it's also kind of reminiscent of the PS2 or PS1 era games where you also had like very limited amounts of vertices, and I'm partially influenced by that, but I also try to come up with my own like aesthetic. Yes. Um, so maybe Rosa, you can talk about the 3 or 4 stages of the game and what they are supposed to be.
Yeah, so like Chris said, when we first started talking about the what the game was going to be, in my head I had quite a clear kind of idea of the different stages, which have somewhat kind of remained the same from the beginning since last September when we started talking. But for me, the kind of game was almost a philosophical inquiry into our relationship with the river and kind of exploring in a kind of creative or playful way, like the ways that um, we relate to the river, the ways that there's like porosity between ourselves and the river through sewage coming in, and also ways that that can kind of be reimagined or move into um, something else. So the stages were models kind of also on a film I was making of having these like different chunks and very moving from different worlds of the ecological reality of the river in the first section. And then you go, as you can see in the image here, into a pipe which is polluting into the river. And then from there, you're into this kind of um, bit of being inside the human body with all this waste, kind of thinking about ourselves as bodies of water and our own waste entering the river, but it's meant to be this kind of like arcade bit of running through. Um, and as kind of a non-experienced gamer, I guess myself, I find it very addictive to play. I really enjoy playing it. And then the final section was kind of back into the river, further down at a kind of very precise location by this bridge where there's a lot of pollution, but also kind of moving more into this like reimagined reality. Yeah, something that kind of departs from the ecological realities as well. And then there's a kind of this fourth section of the game where you end up in space, which I guess we have like finished the ending, but it's kind of still in formulation. So it's interesting to have feedback from people and hear like because I think the ending has been something we've discussed quite a lot. So yeah, it would be interesting, like anyone that's played it, to kind of have comments about this. Um, yeah, so these were the 4 sections, and kind of thinking about the in our conversations, I guess, yeah, being in different places, me being by the river, Christopher being in Germany, and then kind of working, Christopher making the game and working on the idea and the concept together. It was interesting coming from these different angles of, for me, like really tied to a precise engagement with the river and quite an embodied engagement. Like I would go swimming in the river and be filming in the river and kind of be thinking about it from that aspect. And then Chris kind of yeah, having said like not gone there, and then I think the collaboration was interesting to produce this space for something yeah, quite different through our like different backgrounds and different places where we are coming from.
Definitely. And yeah, I think you having a focus on this sensory ethnography kind of helped me because part of it is like experiencing through the camera, uh, like aspects is except from the image, like sounds and like textures and so on. So it kind of helped to like solidify this place in my head, which was also like an interesting aspect. Yeah, so like visually, these 3 sections or 4 sections had to be like separated. So in here, everything is kind of blue, everything is clear. You have a lot of fish swimming around and also like little shells, mussels? No, mussels are like the sea shells. Yeah, like different creatures. Then this section kind of falls out of it, of course, and it's quite fun and quite conventional game-wise, I would say. And then you end up in this open. like section again that is basically the contrast of the first part. And yeah, basically see all the traces that humanity left in this river, like uh, pollution and trash. And it was fun creating all these small items that are floating around in the river. And yeah, then you ascend to the skies. Yeah, like Rosa said, this is still unfinished. Basically, this is only like a, a 360-degree image of space, but in the end, you will be like able to float through stars and so on. Will be a lot cooler. Um, but yeah, one aspect that I found kind of interesting and what I also thought about when making the game is like an aspect of openness. Like I love it when games don't restrict the player too much and kind of I don't know. I think the worst example of it was like uh, Assassin's Creed in the Caribbean, like the pirate game. And I tried to get off the boat because you're in a boat and you can go around all these islands. And I tried to get out and get on one of these islands, and it was like a indivisible wall. It was super frustrating. And I'm always trying to like make it as open as possible so the player has as much freedom as possible. And one interesting aspect of the river is that it's quite linear. So it goes from one place to another. And yeah, this duality of being able to explore, but also following this path because you are supposed to end up in the intestine and then in the third part was kind of interesting. And I'm still trying to figure out good ways on how to combine the two. And then also the combination of an open space in the first level, then it's very linear because you go through the intestine and you have no choice but to go forward. The game literally pushes you forward, and then ending up in like an open area again is kind of interesting. Oh yeah, and the final ascent is then linear again. The game is pushing you towards a certain yeah point, which is space. So that was kind of interesting. Um, yeah, talking about the softwares that I used, because one aspect I think of the Pixel exhibition is also, or the Pixel Festival is also openness. And I also really think that these concepts are, yeah, very important to not not put like tools behind a paywall or behind super yeah, I don't know, like having to pay for classes, for example, to be able to learn a program. And Blender and Godot, I've been using for quite some years now, are yeah very open in because they're open source software, of course, but also because they have a community and basically everything is documented in some form of tutorial um, or forum. And basically all my challenges that I had coding, I was able to figure out by going through what other people experienced before and wrote in some forum very specific problems. And usually there's a solution to it. And so if you haven't checked each of these out, please do. They're really cool. And yeah, so here's a few like work in progress pictures. Yeah, here's the Blender file with all the levels open and all the objects are like tiny in there. And this is what Godot looks like. Basically, yeah, I think what a lot of people are afraid when they open like game engines is the coding part because it's quite unintuitive. And for me, luckily, I managed to push through at some point and figure out coding. But I think the openness of Godot and even Unity or Unreal, there's a lot of tutorials online that you can use to get going, and I think it helps tremendously if you don't have to go through the official documentation. Um, yeah, so. some challenges and maybe also opportunities that we had in this project, where, well, I would say, me coming from like a non-coding background originally, and like, yeah, working mainly visually and never having figured out code before. I started going into it in the COVID time because I had a lot of free time and I thought I might use it to learn coding finally. And then it just clicked at some point that I managed to build upon my previous skills. So, but still, I didn't work on a game this large before. So this was like my first proper game that I also got paid for, um, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, like coding wise, there's always challenges, always something that doesn't work, and you have to figure out a problem. Uh, First, figure out what the problem is, and then try to find a solution for it. And Godot being open source, of course, there's like some little things that might not work as streamlined as like the big game engines. But yeah, I think it's also like having this limit is also kind of liberating, because in creative practices outside of game design, there's always this kind of idea that if you limit yourself to certain um, rules, for example, you can be creative within this room that you open up, basically. And I think having restrictions from the game engine also makes you more creative because you try to explore this space that is possible, that works for the game engine. So that was kind of interesting. And what was also helpful for us, I think, was that we were both financially dependent on other projects. So it wasn't like we have to get done with this game as soon as possible. We could take our time. I was working on it for like a year or over a year now, on and off. And I also didn't have like a super detailed plan of what the world is going to be like or the game is going to be like, apart from this four level structure. And that kind of is also a great opportunity to just start working on it and then set like, and I thought it's also similar to how the game is structured, like having openness and then like a linear path and then openness again and a linear path. And that's how I developed this game. Like I try to explore how can I do this, then I build something, and then I finish building it and explored some more. And that is kind of interesting. Um, yeah, an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice way to think about it as like the collaboration and this whole process being like a combination of openness and kind of and then this like linearity. And I think it's true that we've had a lot of freedom of like the time to do the game without kind of only internal deadlines, I guess. And having like a little bit of funding for the project at the beginning and still like applying to things. And I think we discussed like at the beginning, yeah, we didn't know how what the game was gonna like evolve into. So that was kind of also part of the process of just like basically diving into the river and kind of seeing what became. So yeah, the kind of next step is like finishing, I guess, and like finding um the future life, like where the game will live and in different contexts as well for different people. And again, like continuing with that openness of the game to be like shared with different people. So yeah.
Yeah. So this is the final screen of the game right now. Um, Give us feedback. Like we would really appreciate if you have some sort of comment or idea what we could add to the game and what your experience was. Because yeah, like Rosa said in the beginning, this is the first time that the public sees this game, and yeah, I think it's a also a cool opportunity to like get feedback from people playing it. So yeah, reach out, whatever you saw our names at the beginning. Also, these are the QR codes to like my mail, my Instagram. I also created like an itch.io page where we will probably share the game later on when it's a bit more polished and so on. But I opened like a comment section on there so you can leave a comment and ask questions, for example. And yeah, I think that's it for us. If you have any questions now, feel free to do so. And if you already played the game, you can also give us some feedback. Uh, that would be cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again.